Good evening. Welcome to the committee as a whole meeting for November 5th. Roll call, please.
Sheree Archdale, absent. Linda Bailey.
Here.
Michelle Franklin.
Here.
Rebecca Kern. Here. Julie True.
Here.
Judy Strong, present. Charles Thomas.
Here. Am I standing for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, at this time, comments from the public on action items.
What are the action items? There's no agenda there.
Policy, transportation, building and grounds, and finance.
I have a comment about policies.
Stand up, would you, and give your name and address?
April Emery, 938 Beacon Avenue. The policy about the time change for the student drop-off at LaSalle.
That's handbook, that's not policy. Go ahead.
I don't understand it. I don't know why we weren't given more than a weekend's notice. Now there are children out there running into the parking lot because nobody's supervising them. There's a line backed up all the way to the stoplight every morning to drop our children off.
Did you get the text that I sent you?
No. I got a couple of responses.
Yeah, I said that at 7:50, the children can go in. You were saying you were dropping off at what time?
7:45.
Well, the door's not going to open until a specific time, but cafeteria is available early.
7:45. That was what was in
So
the
you can
handbook.
let them off back here and they can go in and have breakfast.
At what time?
7:50.
Right, but the handbook had always stated 7:45.
Well, it's never been available except for the foyer.
It was a misprint, I believe.
It's been that way for
No, it's
years.
been that way for years.
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 But the board approves that handbook and it becomes part of policy. How
In a
can
way,
we
it
change
does.
it without board discussion?
Because the statement on there says that administration has the ability and the right to change it for security reasons.
Have we had
We
problems
had
with
an issue
security?
early on, and I told Mrs. Davis and Mr. McCarthy that I wanted security tightened up tight. Because we had a member of our children that was taken out without any knowledge whatsoever by a young aunt. And I said, we weren't gonna have this.
Was 5 minutes gonna make any difference to
And
accommodate our
not for
parents?
her to drive 4 minutes to work. She works down at Homewood. So you would still have time at 7:50 to get there.
When are the teachers reporting? They're normally reporting, I believe it used to be 10 till. So,
There is no staff here to really
No.
watch them.
So how has there been staff for so many years?
The only people that are gonna be here will be the cooks. So
To
if
answer
you
your
let them
question,
off,
we
and let them
had
go into
staff.
the cafeteria.
Coming in at different times so that they could watch the children.
No, I'm sorry,
Didn't
Mrs.
we?
Bailey, that is
Didn't
not
Mr. Bennett
correct.
come in?
Yes.
No, that is not correct.
we
These
had
children
staff.
have been unsupervised. If you made the pickup time at 7:30, people would drop off at 7:15. This is a problem that exists in many schools. And I've also called, April, I called your supervisor, who said it would be fine if you were 5 minutes late.
No, I know, and I've told
Yeah,
you.
and because I said, is this really an issue until we can look at it further? But we can have a conversation, a presentation, I meant, about this and our heightened security and our need for heightened security. Columbine happened and nobody likes that, but it's a different world. And I think the
And
parents,
I get for security reasons, but now there's still parents that are dropping their kids off.
but they will, and at every
kids almost
school,
got hit in the parking lot the other
right,
day.
every school I've ever
How is that more
supervised,
secure?
parents drop kids off well before they're ever supposed to. So what we do to accommodate that, we've had before care, we have breakfast earlier. No matter what you do, we do as an administration, somebody's going to push that limit. And so we can only do the best we can do and let parents know kids are not supervised out there in that playground.
Any other? Students?
Randy Giddens, 821 South Creve Coeur Avenue. What I just heard, my comment is, you're absolutely wrong, Mr. Thomas. You have no authority on this. You're sitting at a board meeting. You can call a board meeting, have discussion, and you all make a decision. You have to make those decisions in public. Make change in policy on your own. You have no authority to do so per state law. You have, and you should know that. You've been on the board long enough.
Thank you.
I'm not done.
Okay, go right on ahead, because you weren't listening.
I was listening. You're
No,
talking
you were
about
not.
some policies. Something changed in the handbook, and that's based on what the board has done.
The handbook
You need
is
to
not
communicate with the, excuse me, you need to communicate with this community a lot better than you have been doing. And that's why I've been coming to these meetings. I only intended to show up to one meeting, and that was about the buses. And it's starting to get cold. Now I want you to think about those kids when it's cold. The decision, because you're still making a profit in the transportation fund. You're not losing any money, but you turn these kids out into the cold. I don't see the justification for that either. But I would appreciate the board start following the state laws, making decisions in the public, in the open, instead of all this backdoor stuff. I'm fed up with it. I honestly am.
Thank you.
And by the way, people that are interested for running for the board, this board doesn't want you to know about it, but you can take out the petitions right now. The date to start turning them in, the secretary's having trouble understanding what her function is, but it starts December 17th, ends December 24th. And yes, since she's the only one that accepting it, she has to be there the whole time, not just whenever she feels like it. Check out the state laws, please. Check them out when you're up at the conference in Chicago. Get the answers, let's start following the rules.
Thank you. Anyone else? Hearing none. On to transport policy. We've got about 19 of them. For the most part, it's language and add-ons to the footnotes. First one is 5125. Personal technology and social media usage and conduct.
Oh, wait a minute, that's not, okay. 5125,
Yeah.
okay, they're not in that order. Sorry.
No, they're
Okay, I don't have, can we go in order?
yeah, if you've got one in order, go ahead. No,
Well, the
mine-
packet's in order.
Mine's. this
Oh,
one
never
is-
mind, okay, sorry.
Go ahead.
It's page 6.
Thank you.
Oh, I got it. 5.125 actually does not exist in our policy book, so I assume we should accept it.
All right. Any discussion on it?
Or at least it's not in my policy book.
No.
I don't have an old one here for this one, so.
I think it, did I receive this section? And also, did you receive one plus one and one?
The press.
Yeah. Well, it gives the revisions to policies
Yeah, I
and
don't
checks
know.
the numbers.
I think, no.
Because that's the first I've seen 5302.
It's a new policy. That's why.
Pardon?
It's a new policy, right? Because it just came down in January and now it's October and they're already changing it.
Yep.
Okay, the next one, hearing nothing, 6.210.
I'm sorry, what was that?
6.210.
Towards the back.
That was last updated in 2006 in our books,
Right.
so that's very.
Well, we had one in 2011.
So,
Big thing there is on that, the add-on was for the superintendent or designee to provide a list or description of textbooks.
Annually.
Annually, yeah. Okay, 7.70. As far as I could tell, his footnote changed.
that one also hasn't been updated since 2008, so I think.
Well, it says the policy's unchanged, it's just a footnote.
The problem is we don't know how many times it's been changed since 2008.
You just accept the new one.
So if we accept the new one, I know, that's what I'm saying, if we.
The copy here that I've got is 2004, so.
In my book, it's 2008.
But it depends on when the press decides to send a new policy out. I mean, they don't, I said it depends on when press sends a new policy out. Not every policy will be updated, because when Julie read her list a couple months ago, I mean, I'm sure we were not neglect on doing those policies, because Mr. Thomas was head of policy, and I'm sure he got them all. So it's not,
We followed the press.
we followed press, so.
But the unfortunate thing is that they weren't updated properly during the summer, as we were hoping they would be.
Oh, I see, so the board members may not have the correct policy, even though it was accepted and
Instead of
approved.
doing it during the summer, each one of us should be responsible for our own
Okay.
book. Okay, 7.70.
That's what we just did.
Yeah. Truancy. There was no discussion on truancy though.
Oh, it doesn't really
That's
matter.
fine. It's not hard to.
Because we're going right back to 6 in a minute.
Do we need to, when we adopt this, do we need to make sure that 10 and 11 is omitted?
That would be a good thing.
Oh, it has a
I hope we
subtitle.
don't have any 17-year-olds.
Yeah. So it looks like they dropped the 10% percentage down to 5%. Allowed. In the footnotes, it's telling us that they dropped from 10% allowed truancy down to 5%. That should be effective for those classroom teachers.
And at the beginning of this policy, it talks about kids the age of 7 to 17, so we could just adjust ages.
There's been,
17-year-old 8th graders?
I know of 16-year-olds, so I wouldn't say there wouldn't be any 17-year-olds.
Please no.
Okay.
Okay.
12 to kindergarten through
Mhm.
8. That's a number 2, Chuck.
Number 4. So you have a 14-year-old in 8th grade.
Yeah,
Any child 16 years of age or older who is employed, you can knock that out, number 6.
Mhm.
Does our handbook state, that next paragraph on absence allowed includes?
We can check.
Okay.
Okay. Except with changes. .110. Please. If you'll go down, they've remitted the Illinois Hope for Opportunity that deals with up near Chicago. So, that was a really new one too, 2012 I've got.
yeah, April 2012. So they cut programs apparently already. Is this, well, it talks about high school graduation and stuff. Count on this.
Incentive program.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if that counts as, if you know, a graduation incentive program.
And does this include special needs?
I don't have
What
a
is it
six.
measured?
In there, it doesn't have to be.
Oh, I don't think, I mean, these all could
Yeah, they,
potentially.
they're potential. Doesn't mean you have to have.
Part of-
Okay.
No, they have the 6 that it says after that last.
It's down here.
I don't have it. There it is. Entitled to claim state aid.
Oh, it does say special ed.
Yeah, resources.
Mhm. Because I believe special needs can stay in school till they're like 20.
Right, but they're passed on to high school at 15. They become the high school's.
Property. Okay, the next one would be 6.65. The last one was 2004. updated material, legal references, and cross references.
Looks like a lot of terminology.
It's been a lot of-
Yeah,
it's
so the
been
former version of
dropped.
the policy is sufficient. But the updated version's better, reflects the standards.
Mhm.
On, back page there on number 3, I believe our Head Start program is helping us cover some of that part of it. Providing families and parents.
Mhm. Mhm.
6.60.
They have been trained at Parkview, correct? That's what I thought.
You'll notice they talking about upper classes too, like 9 through 12 on number 2.
Driver's education and stuff.
But these are all footnotes, they're not accepting the policy anymore.
On number 2.
No, that's not good.
Number 3 should be 7 through 8. Number 4, kindergarten through 8th. Number 5, kindergarten through 8th.
And are you suggesting we take out number 2 completely? Since it talks about,
Language arts, writing extensive course, science.
or just adjusting it? Because all the ones up at the top talk about language, number 2 is all high school stuff, driver's ed and what they have to do to take driver's ed.
Actually, 2 could be just remitted completely out of it with the changes to the others. 6.20. Last one was 2010. Footnote changes only, everything pretty much stays the same. .30. See, done away with checking the credit history. And certain investigations are going to be termed as illegal when investigating a certain person. And it says here in the press, added paragraph prohibiting investigation into or inquiry concerning an applicant's credit history or report unless a satisfactory credit history is an established bona fide occupational requirement for a particular position. Applicant's claim made or benefits received under his workers' comp and access to employees or applicant's social networking website, including a request for password to such sites, are all deemed illegal.
Were you suggesting that footnote be put into the policy?
I think the policy is pretty well explicit.
They took it out.
Yeah.
They crossed it out.
Mhm. 4.170. Operational services.
It just has updated, amendments to the administrative procedure references to update titles is all that's changed in this. And then the footnotes are updated because of legal reasons.
Did you see that it says that on the bus, students cannot use their cell phones?
Not supposed to be able to.
It's under number 9, footnote.
4.70. 2009 was the last one. Footnotes only were amended.
Legal references were updated.
Oh, I see, so changed.
Four point 4.45.
That's an old one. 1995 is the one in my book.
Mhm.
Well, it's saying on this paper May, so did we not do it in May? See on the top of it?
I don't know if that's when they first presented it, maybe.
That should be a replacement, I believe.
Unless we did replace it, let me look here. So when I made my list, that was before I. No, this one looks like it's been hand typed on a typewriter.
Which is old, so where did it go in May?
Who knows, just accept the name.
Who knows?
With all the changes in the law concerning this, I think it'd be best just to go with the new one no matter what.
I think personally, all of them, we should just go with the new,
Yeah.
according to legal wise.
What fits for one district may not fit for another. I mean, they give you the leeway to add to one or to take away from, just like you took away at 18 years old. Yes.
If I might, the lawyers will recommend not doing that. That
Really?
There's a team of folks, certainly there's some leverage if it's not applicable. But these policies are designed by teams of attorneys and people versed in school code and law, and they are meant to protect boards and administrations.
And I know we made a few policies that there was no policy for. We had to make them. And we ran it by the attorneys.
Well,
I mean, there are cases that press just doesn't cover.
Well, with the school.
The
Charter
virtual school was one. Our cell phone policy is
Policy.
stricter than any other schools, and those were both ran by the attorneys.
Well, I don't think what she says is that you can't make up your own policy.
It's just
As long as we ran it
suggested.
through the lawyers,
That's what I thought.
you know, and they did the
Right.
legalese to it, whatever.
Absolutely.
.220.
It's just legal references updated
Mhm.
for the new laws that are coming into effect.
On page 3, would you want to consider taking out number 3? It says a summary of the discussion of all matters proposed, deliberated, or decided, and a record of any votes taken.
we do that.
Number 3.
Right, do you want to take it out? Because there isn't any discussion usually on our minutes. Not a lot of discussion is showing up.
It just
on
said a
minutes.
summary. We've passed by the minutes to the attorney twice. You detailed much more than they are detailed now, but they are perfectly compliant.
Yeah, it says by law you don't have to do it, so I'm just asking, do you wanna take out number 3?
Well, I'm told that our minutes comply with that requirement.
Well, because I don't have that.
No, you can't do away with 3 because it also is
Oh,
recording the
sorry.
votes taken,
Looking at
so.
the wrong one.
Okay.
Guess I don't understand why you thought deemed it necessary to take it away.
Because if you read the footnotes, it's not required by law that you have that in there, right?
We always have, though, have we not?
Yes.
Well,
Yeah.
just by providing minutes, we have a summary
Right.
of everything proposed, deliberated, and decided on.
Right.
You don't have detailed, but it's
No
not,
detail, no.
it's not supposed to be detailed, it doesn't say detailed discussion.
Summary.
It just says.
Right.
It usually says motion made by, seconded by, roll call.
Well, and that's what you legally are required to do.
Just asking if you wanted to change it.
Okay, 2.200.
That was just done too, it must be legal. Yeah, new laws that are coming in effect in January.
Okay, 2.125. Mrs. Bailey, you had a question about this that you wanted to say?
If we wanted to keep the old policy, it's the same, just on the meal charges. Footnote number 6 gives you that option. Instead of daily limit for meal costs. I think it's been set at $50 a day for probably the last 10 years. At least it defines mid-fare. There's a definition, whatever amount you want to allot. But the policy just reads mid-fare selection, so there's no specific amount.
Remember, the tips are also into that 50.
Yes.
And it says on number 6 that boards could add that sentence there.
Exactly, and the old policy does have that.
My only comment to that, Linda, is if you've had it for $50 for 10 years, you know where I'm going with that?
Well,
10 years ago, you
I-
guys were eating really well.
I just made the statement, not in Chicago.
That's what I'm saying, so you might want to
You
boost
might,
it.
I just,
You might want to boost that limit. You might, if you put a limit there, you might want to boost that.
and
It's
I've
really
been
the only-
exaggerating on 10 years too. It's been that way for a long time.
Definitely wouldn't cover.
I think $10 for breakfast, $10 for lunch, and $20 for dinner is plenty.
In Chicago.
In Chicago?
You can, yes, you
Look
can
at you.
eat that well.
Good luck with that.
Yeah.
You
You
can.
can.
Dominate.
Yeah, pizza for 3 meals a day.
No.
You can eat that.
They could do that, you can do that easy up there.
I
Just
spent
when
the
you
days
go
in
to
Chicago with my girls not long
restaurants.
ago, and we eat cheap. At restaurants, sit down, not fast food.
Okay, 0.110.
What did we decide? Leave it alone?
Are we gonna,
Was it hurt, you want to change it? Would you want to increase it?
No, I just wanted to know if you wanted to take that footnote and put it in this policy or not. I didn't understand what the board wanted to do.
I think the footnotes, the lawyers have come up with a conclusion on those. As long as the main reference to it is in the policy.
well,
What
I
is
think
your
there should be
reasoning?
a limit per day.
Well, there is.
Not in the
I
new
mean,
one.
Not in the new
if you
one. We
don't
have to
eat
add it.
one meal a day, so you can add two
Have a
or
$50 lunch, and then,
whatever, it's up to you how you eat.
but we have to add that little note there up to this, is what Linda's saying.
Or not, I don't care, I just, suggestion,
I think we should have it.
that way it's clear cut.
We can have final consensus on it at the next meeting.
Your board members are entrusted with much more money than $50, so that's why, you know, if they're lasting for 4 to 6 years, perhaps why it shouldn't be in there. And it can, I don't know, can it be discussed at a board meeting then, if somebody turns in receipts that seem exorbitant, you know, and addressed as a
It'll
board?
be under executive session.
No, it's in policy right here, that you turn in your requisition to the superintendent and the president, I think, Judy.
Yeah, but then could it be addressed? We're not gonna
Sure.
accept your amount because it's too high
Right.
compared to the rest of them that are in
I
there.
believe so.
Might be better just to leave it and not have a set amount, especially if it stays in place for 4 to 6 years. Look what's happened in 4 years of pricing of food and gas, so.
Well, that's the gas portion, that's established through federal, so.
Yeah, I mean, just in general,
Okay.
But if you,
our economics.
and different boards do it different ways. Some send you to Chicago, I think you get your mileage, and then you pay for your own out of your own pocket and bring back receipts. Our theory is we never wanted to put any board member in that position. You know, what if they didn't have the money? So, it was just a cut and dry, easy to do.
Does it say anything about turning in receipts? Because personally, I think we should have to turn in receipts. And return whatever money we don't use.
do you return the wear and tear on your car though? I mean,
Well, that comes
That is
under your
under
That's
mileage.
under
True.
mileage.
right,
Doesn't it say on your check how much they're giving you for mileage and wear and tear?
so you're just
So you
saying.
get to keep
Does
that
that,
money.
does that pay for the toll booths that you've blown?
I don't know. I blew as many as I did.
I never got it. I never got it.
Didn't you? Okay, so I think that's fair. I mean, if you don't eat the $50 a day, you know, equal to the $50 a day to return the money.
Because it says that you need to attach your receipts to your voucher. I mean, because it says on there how much they're giving you for food and how much they're giving you for.
Right.
I think receipts for everything needs to be turned in.
Oh, that's hard, Julie.
And
I
whatever
guess.
you don't use, you whatever money's
Mhm.
not accounted for by receipts, you return.
My only comment about that is if you go to Chicago and you don't spend $50 on food, you have the flu. There's no way to eat 3 meals a day in Chicago for under $50 unless you get a Big Mac.
Exactly.
Well, and I
So-
buy food and take it.
Yeah, I mean.
So, and I've already done
right.
that and you don't have
And you
anything
still spend
for it.
$50 for time, because you're expected
Unless
to
you go
tip
to a
and,
lot of hospitality rooms.
well, they don't have those so much anymore, so.
They still
But-
have pool tables.
But you know what I'm saying, so.
But it's very easy to go out for dinner and spend over $50 there.
Just on a meal.
I
My
mean,
first meal,
First
the
meal.
doc took us to,
Mhm. Easily $80, $100.
I think that was 400, close to 400 some dollars.
It's expensive.
Okay. I'm not gonna argue. I just think it's business-like to turn in receipts for your expenses. If we expect our teachers to turn in receipts, we should have to turn in receipts. It's not a perk. I mean, if I choose to go to go to Chicago and take however much money with me and eat at McDonald's every day and save the money, I shouldn't get to keep the money just because I chose to eat at McDonald's all day.
I agree.
I agree.
And so so you agree with that, but you don't agree with turning in receipts?
No, I just think, what are you gonna do by the time you add all the stuff that most of you ladies like to go down to the bottom and you've got 5 bags of free stuff that you collected off all those vendors, and you're gonna, sooner or later, you're gonna miss some of your vouchers, and then what are you gonna do?
Well, like the cab.
Right, I was
You know?
just gonna say, you don't
You
get
don't-
receipts
they
for
don't, the cabs
taxes.
They
don't
give
give.
you receipts.
No.
No, they don't.
We don't pay
If you ask them, they do.
We don't pay for cabs.
No, but that comes out of your money.
Mm-hmm.
Right, we don't pay for cabs.
No, not additionally, but this year as far down as you are, cab's looking pretty good. But that comes out of your money.
Okay, do what you want. I'll save my receipts.
I do. For most of them. Okay, let's see, go on to 2.110. 2.3.
I have 2007 actually in my book.
How much is it for the state board to come in and
Just give us a new book. That's. I can
redo
check
this?
it up today.
Small fortune.
Yeah, I went, I think it was Mrs. Reagan and I went to that one, and
It's expensive.
Maybe you're right, 2000, I must have written down the wrong one. 1998, yeah.
I'm sure there's enough new laws.
Since then, yeah. Oh, yeah, the press last updated it in 2007, I think, is what I wrote down. No, but ours is 19.
Because that dealt with canvassing of the votes, right? That's not a long time.
Two-two-oh.
Number one explains
For me?
Number one explains formulating, adopting, and modifying board policies at its sole discretion.
I think number 11 is the change. How do we currently do that? With the school report card. Represent in December. I know, how do we give it to the parents now?
I'll
Give
put it
online.
We're gonna have, a presentation by Ginny Williamson in December.
Oh, I don't need the, iSat anymore. I found it online, it's on IIRC.
Well, and as we talked about, data alone without background and content doesn't mean anything. So that's why, Ginny Williamson is gonna come and present.
I believe in the past, those were submitted through the teachers to the families.
I remember that, they went home with report cards, so I wondered how we were doing it now.
Oh.
You know, maybe
Oh, I
somebody
asked
doesn't
them.
have a computer.
Probably during the teacher parent conferences, it was
Well, regardless, it says we
Oh,
have to.
our school
Well,
report's
we,
online, I guess.
we
so.
put it online.
I'm sorry, what was that, John?
4.10.
Did you find it?
Page one.
Well, then. There's a number of times.
110. 4.110.
Footnotes, footnotes are the only change.
Footnotes for state legislation changes.
We have to go backwards to get to it.
Yeah.
I need an explanation. On the footnote, number 2, it says districts that are not required to provide free transportation may do so. To qualify for state reimbursement, districts electing to provide transportation when they are not required to do so must afford the same service to all students in the same situation.
We'll ask.
It also goes to say, following that, districts may provide transportation within 1.5 miles and may charge for such transportation.
Where are we at on that too?
That's on 2.
I know, we were looking into it. We were looking into it, Mrs. Davis said she'd get back to us.
Yes.
We're still looking into it.
Well, we want a conversation about it. We want to have a meeting on, do we want to do it? And if we do, what are we going to charge? And who, you know. Probably December, let's talk about charge. I think what we concluded was you'd have to do it by semester at least. In other words, none of this I'm gonna ride today, not ride tomorrow. You'd have to do it, and you'd have to probably charge $1 a day. And that's probably losing a little, but it's offering a service, so the board would have to decide, do you wanna absorb that? And then you'd have to do it at least, you know, we talked about, if you did it at registration annually, it's $350.
Even every 9 weeks, but I can't see the 1 week, not the next week, you're gonna have to do it. Like you said, a
But
semester or 9 weeks.
You can't change it every 9 weeks, because you can't keep changing bus routes on drivers, because we lose kids. We have a hard enough time, because kids are moving in and out, you know.
That's what I was just gonna say, what if they pay and they move out?
Well, that's one issue, but the other becomes a real issue for drivers, to make sure that the children they have are, they're dropped off and picked up, and the same stop. We have such tremendous mobility that it's hard on the drivers anyway. So to add this to the mix, you'd have to make a commitment, and there are some parents that want to do that. But there are those that would want to do it that couldn't afford it.
Okay, 4.10.
That's the only difference in ours, from ours to this one.
4.6.
Is that new laws stuff?
We just did this
We
one
just-
2 months ago.
Yep. New January 2013 laws. There's gonna be a bunch of them like this with all these new laws coming down. I bet 2014 is gonna be a time.
This is prevailing wages. It's supposed to be on your district website.
Is that referring to the minimum government hourly wage?
It's just a different shape.
Yeah. No, it's just available at the department's official website, not the schools.
Is that all?
Mhm.
That's enough.
That's plenty.
Okay, transportation. Got a note right before the meeting tonight that Bus 5 is not any longer functioning. And there's been discussion already, I guess, with some of the drivers about the feasibility of replacing or repairing. Evidently the front end or bearings or something.
It's old. My opinion is it's not
That's
worth
the
it.
oldest one, I remember Dr. Wilkie purchased, went ahead and purchased it.
Last time it was low, or is it ours now?
It's
No, it's
Oh,
ours.
It's ours, it's not.
Wait, yeah, that's.
Okay. I
That's
would have been
ours.
too
That's how
lucky
it
that
works.
you could have just
Right.
rolled it. No, okay.
Yeah.
So,
It's okay, my supervisor.
That might
When
not
we
be the
come-
best word to use.
I
Well,
think-
no.
I think when we look at transportation as a whole, this is a piece of it. To look at what buses are coming up, you know, and are you going to limit transportation further? There's been some conversation about reducing another bus. You know, there was some controversy about that expressed. We've got to come to a decision about that, though we have had very few concerns about Parkview at this point. I think you'd hear a lot more conversation about LaSalle. There has been a request to pay to ride. So I think we have to come to some conclusion before those leases are up.
Is there room on the bus? I mean, 'cause didn't you say one of the buses is like 3 kids to a seat?
Well, and Stephanie just shifted that so that there's more equal transportation now on the buses. The problem is that some buses have a longer drive right, you know, they're in their buses longer, and so you can't just reapportion all the kids,
Right.
but they made it more equitable.
Best Buy, are we using Best Buy? I mean, obviously not now.
Not now.
It's broken, but
Yeah, we used it as a, when
Backup.
something else happened,
it was a backup.
yeah.
Is that the one that sits outside?
It's kinda like a yard, like a yard
I
ornament,
remember
it's kinda like the
all-
truck.
It
We
could
have
very
yard
well be
ornaments.
bearings, but it's gonna be expensive to replace the bearings, because it just sits, doesn't really get out and move.
Right.
What is our limit on those buses? How many are they supposed to hold?
About 60.
If my numbers are right, bus one now has 49,
Right.
two has 45, three has 51, and bus four is 36.
So they're all under.
Oh, yeah,
36?
that's Gary's
Parking or-
bus.
Here, he's got
He's
a
got the
longer
longer,
run.
he's got the long run, less kids, but farther distance, because their contract says it runs an hour. We are limited by their contract. And their contract also indicates four buses.
I think a total of 60.
36 from LaSalle or Parkview. It doesn't seem like enough.
No, it doesn't. That's what they've got, because
At
there's
a
16
time.
students transferred to other buses.
Can you snap what is that first one? What is the first paragraph say?
So the three's
And the
normal.
bus overload.
South.
How often do we use Bus 5? Not enough.
Not enough.
Doesn't this, don't those numbers just speak to the afternoon run?
It doesn't
Yeah.
say here as to
The
what it
afternoon
is.
run, I think.
It's basically based over for, I guess it's for Parkview Maitland.
Yeah, the morning routes will remain the same.
So that's just one.
There it is, yeah.
That's what I
One.
thought.
Yeah, it didn't seem
It
right.
didn't seem helping out.
Building and grounds. I think this is something that Mrs. Bailey commented on. I remember a valve being replaced here some years ago. But the money that was just recently spent in September was for the backflow preventer, not the valve.
And that was Mrs. Burchell that was asking for it.
It said PEPCO did the investigation, found out that the backflow was leaking, but they wanted a lot more than O'Brien to fix it. But PEPCO has usually done the investigation or inspections. The bad thing of it is, the trouble is getting to the backflow preventer. It usually is, in most cases, an O-ring. But the labor involved is usually intensive. But there was no payment for, dual payment for the same job done. Okay, finance.
I have a question on
Yeah.
building and grounds, please. What about this guardrail? Where did that come from? And how much does it cost and why is it there? And
Well, it'll be in the next,
Good idea myself. As many times as cars has crossed over into that sidewalk while the people have been there, so. Where it came from, Toby, was that under the total amount for that?
I'll have to check. You mean the overlay, gravelly thing, I'll check.
I haven't seen it. Where's it at?
and the two gem doors.
It's a good job.
It's a good spot for it because
In front
people
of the
drive,
doors?
yeah, because you know where the
Oh.
gravel,
Not in front.
Not in front of the doors, between the doors.
That's what the kids do.
Oh, for pickup now?
Yeah.
because when
Okay.
people swing around there, they always drive up on that sidewalk.
Very
Okay.
close.
I didn't
Or
realize
on
that's
it.
where we were dropping, or that's where we're loading.
And they're parking at the door, when it wasn't there, they were parking up to the door.
That's how. And those doors, my ears.
So we don't know how much it cost yet.
Well, it'll be in the packet also.
Okay.
right
have
there.
updates going.
We're getting there. Finance. Okay, let's go back to stars. The last time they were inspected, they only got a 2 out of a possible 6. So the grant in fiscal year 2010, we supposedly had a grant of $100,831 granted us. We spent $10,682 of our own funds. In 2009, the grant was for $112,034. We spent $21,331 of our own funds. Going back to 2008, the grant was for $109,837. We spent $19,986. Preschool program conducted at Homewood Heights for the 3 years mentioned, and at a greater expense of $159,000 last year. The grant was submitted to cover costs of staff, material, and transportation. The district covered the costs of the building, which included insurance, gas, lights, water, custodial, and groundskeeping. At that time, no meals were served or provided. Last year, the government cautioned us that while a district could be awarded a grant, the state had no obligation to pay. Now, they can tell us we got umpteen grants, but you're on your own. Okay, now, let's compare it a little bit to Head Start. The salaries for the teacher and aide is approximately $70,000. The cost of transportation, which last year was reported at $50,000, the cost of meals and supplies.
But they're paying the teachers.
Yeah, well, let me get there.
Okay, I'm
Okay,
sorry.
you stay and do your.
I thought you jumped
No,
over.
they also provided dental and health service and when required, offering parenting classes. They will be able to serve 62, stars only serve 40. What we pay is gas, lights, and routine custodial. Routine maintenance. They pay for any program additions like a storage shed or anything else. They also pay the $70,000 in salary. It doesn't come from our pocket. They pay the $50,000 transportation costs. And they also are paying us for their food under a family type situation.
On that transportation, is that on our buses they're paying or on their own buses? On their own buses. And then, how about the insurance? It was mentioned up in stars, but it didn't mention that we pay, I would imagine we have to have insurance on the building. Yeah. Okay.
So now, let's get this straight. Head Start pays their salary, $70,000, transportation of $50,000, and the food.
What do we have the food figured at?
I think, what was it, 78 cents for breakfast and is under,
But it's a federal guideline, I think I gave that to you somewhere. They pay the federal rate per meal.
Because that's what they get paid
Right.
from the government.
They pay that. I thought I handed that to somebody. Anyway, it's the same, free and reduced, they get free and reduced, they're, all of their, oh, here it is.
Breakfast is $1.55, lunch $2.86, supplements
Supplements are 78
78 cents.
that's what it is. I guess that would be milk.
Like supplements and cheat shakes and
Monster drink.
monster drinks. Fire up those Head Starters.
Okay, for Homewood, tabulating lights and gas for last year, 2011 through 2012, $7,000. I think what we're looking at right now is gonna be approximately 12,000 in lights, gas, custodial and insurance. But for that, we're receiving $36,000 in rent between the alternate school and East Peoria.
You get money exchange?
Yeah, it's a profit, which is hard to beat. For anyone that's interested, $55,000 is what we spend for liability at all 4 buildings. We didn't really break it down through them, just for our liability there at alternate school, $55,000 for liability.
So do you know when Head Start's gonna get going?
The big thing with Head Start right now is the state fire marshal has not come. And I think East Peoria is waiting for a fire marshal there also. They can open because they were already open prior to. And I would not, Mrs. Davis and I were talking, the district fire marshal that is incorporated into this area should be able to come. We don't have to wait for Springfield. That's what the district fire marshal's for, is to do the running. But I think we're just gonna have our hands tied until they do, because they won't move in until,
We're just on
Yeah,
the
it's
list
ready.
then.
so. Got this a little additional from the Association of School Administrators. This is a list of talking points with area legislators regarding the anticipated loss to the region of funding, general state aid, proration, and loss of district fund balance reserves. For Mason, Peoria, Tazewell, Woodford, represents 47 school districts and approximately 57,000 students. Number one, the notion that school districts can easily absorb the state shifting its portion of the pension cost to local districts is just not true. Two, districts already have had to absorb an 11% cut in general state aid over the past 2 school years and a 42% cut in transportation reimbursements over the past 3 school years. Every district also has lost corporate personal property replacement tax funding, a total of more than $4.3 million being lost in the 4 counties of Central Illinois Valley region. Looking at the 47 school districts in Central Illinois Valley region, consider these facts. 42 of the 47 school districts have deficit operating budgets this year, meaning that those 42 districts have had to dip into their reserve funds to avoid cutting programs and staff. The amount drained from those reserve funds total more than $32.5 million, or more than 10% of all reserve funds. That's just to keep what they had, with some districts having to use up to 25, 39, and even 50% of their reserve funds. History shows that once a district begins operating in a deficit budget, the deficits tend to snowball. The cash reserves that school districts have built up by being good stewards are a school district's only safety net when it comes to state budget cuts, late state payments, or unexpected expenses. Many of those reserves are limited by law in the ways they can be used, with some reserved expressly for things like building projects and tort. Once cash reserves are drained, the only option left for school districts is to raise local property taxes. if that is even possible, or to cut staff and programs even further than they have already been cut. The real impact of those cuts are things that affect the quality of education for our children, including larger class sizes, fewer course offerings, longer bus rides, inability to implement new technology or programs, and elimination of extracurricular programs. And it don't look good, folks. I don't see too much else coming down.
But, Mr. Thomas, on the positive side, we're the minority that is not going into the deficit. And that is a positive for our school district.
But I talked to the gentleman that was here, the auditor, I think it was. He suggests that we do implement some usage of our reserve to use up some of the money from that we got with our grant. Because he said you don't want to pay back so much, give back so much, because you're going to be held up with the interest when we give money back from that grant that we had. So he said try to dwindle it down, but be very cautious as what you use the deficit spending to add to that to get some big jobs taken care of.
So as of yet, though, we have not
No.
been one of those districts
No.
that has had to dip.
And the other things in your package were things that Mrs. Daly asked for.
Mr. Thomas, I have a question. Since we're on finance, I've noticed that the last several meetings we've had police presence here. I was just wondering if we're paying them, and if we are, how much?
That will be referred to this lady,
Yeah, and that's probably executive session.
executive session. All right. We'll cover it this time at the next meeting. So, anything else? Okay, I ask for a motion to adjourn.
Cheaper than the lawyer.
Motion to adjourn.
Need a second?
Second?